Hello, 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 everybody. First of all, I would like to thank each and every person who joins in with me on this podcast. Sorry, forgive me, y'all. I would like to thank each and every person who's under the sound of my voice. As Facebook indicates to others that I am on, if you can, if you will, do all the things that are free. Just go ahead. Please share out the podcast, like, love, tag someone. That will help the video get more reach, and I appreciate it. I pray each and everybody had a beautiful day on today. The weather is not too hot and it's not too cold, but it's enjoyable. So I just thank God for that. As I allow Facebook to indicate to others that I'm on, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share this video out now. Like I said, I'm allowing Facebook to indicate to others that I'm on tonight. I pray that everybody had a beautiful weekend. My weekend was good. I hope yours was good as well. As I say, any day that God gives us a chance to wake up, it's a good day. And I thank God for that. Taz, thank you so much for joining in with me on tonight. Taz, I appreciate you so much. Taz said amen. Wait. Let me put your comment up here, Taz. It says God is good all the time. Thank you, Taz, so much for that. I have a topic up on today that says, do you really want to go back there? Y'all just think about that. Think about that. You know, sometimes there's places that we say, Charlene, thank you so much for joining in with me on tonight. Thank you. Sometimes we say, I wish I could go back there. And after saying that so many times, I had to put a lot of thought into what I was saying. Sometimes, and I'm just speaking for me, sometimes we don't put thought into some of the things that we say. We just think, oh, we just saying something. But sometimes you don't realize what all comes with where you want to go back to. So as I said, thank each and every person that's under the sound of my voice for joining in. Sometimes we really don't put any thought, and I'll speak for myself, you all. It's a lot of times when I have said, honestly, I wish I could go back there, but not putting a whole lot of thought into. Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining in with me on tonight. I appreciate you. Not putting a lot of thought into what I'm really saying. Sometimes you gotta ask where you want to go back to. What was so good about it? And why didn't you stay there? Y'all catch that? I thought about this really hard as I was reading the Bible. And I had to ask myself the question, do you really want to go back there? You know, sometimes you really have to ask yourself the question. You find yourself in life saying, I wish I could go back to when I was younger. I wish I could go back to when I was this age. Not really realizing that if you go back to this or if you go back to that, you got to consider going back to everything, whether it was good or bad. You got to consider going back to everything that was back there. You know, the Bible tells us that we're not to remember the former things because God is doing a new thing in our life. Behold, it may have not sprung forward yet, but God is pushing us forward. So you have to, Latanya, thank you so much for joining in with me. Ask yourself, Do you really want to go back there? Latanya, I was talking about how sometimes we don't realize, we say all the times, I wish I can go back to when I was 30. I wish I can go back to when I was a teenager. I wish I can go back to when I was a child. And as I begin to read the Bible, I began to ask myself the questions. Do I want everything that came with me back there? Y'all catch that? So as I begin to look, I began to go back to, and I where I came from was in Exodus 14, where God was telling Moses and Aaron to go tell Pharaoh to let my people go. Now y'all check this out. Back there came with a lot. So if back there came with a lot, at some point when we were back there, we may have found ourselves saying, I'll be glad when it's over. I'll be glad when I become grown, I get grown, because now I'm a teenager. So when we were back there, we found ourselves saying we wanted to move forward, because what was back there, some of the stuff that's back there, we really didn't like. And so as I was reading this story, I had to ask myself, I says, so if I go back there, do I want everything that came with going back there, whether it was good and bad? Then you have to realize, if you were allowed to go back there, y'all, it makes so much sense. You have to pull a lot of people back there with you. You know why? Because you got to realize that when God formed you, he knew all about you. So God knew everything that you were going to go through. Everything that we have went through in our life, it didn't just happen and catch God off guard. God already knew what was going to happen, how it was going to happen, and when it was going to happen. So God moved you. You got to realize sometimes back there, God had to give you a breakthrough to get you from back there to move you from where you are now. Have you ever really thought about, if I go back there, what am I going back to? Y'all catch this. So as I was reading, I was saying that sometimes back there, you encountered a lot of things. You encountered a lot of mess. And I had to really ask myself the question, if God brought me from there, the real question to me, myself, is, do I really want to go back there? Some parts of there may have been good, but do I want to go back to everything that was back there? Because in order for me to get the full picture of back there, I got to take the good and I got to take the bad at the same time. So y'all, I'm going somewhere. So it says, the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites to turn back. So God was telling Moses to tell them to turn back, because what he was going to do is, Bull, thank you so much for joining in. Zizi, thank you so much for joining in. What he was going to do is, he was going to confuse Pharaoh. See, Pharaoh thought that they were going to go one way. So Pharaoh finally, remember, so go back. Remember, God told Moses to tell Pharaoh to let my people go, right? So when he told Moses to tell him to let my people go, remember, he had to go through a series of things with Pharaoh before Pharaoh even let those people go. Remember, he had to send frogs, locusts, darkness, hail, boils, livestock. He had to kill the livestock. He sent nets and flies. Remember, he had to do several things before Pharaoh decided to let the people go. Isn't it funny how you can be trapped with somebody and God keeps speaking to them, telling them to let you go, and God keeps sending them warnings, telling them that they need to release you, but it's not until God decides that their time is up. Y'all catch this. So what he did was, he told Moses to tell the people to go a different way because he was going to confuse Pharaoh. He also said this. Y'all be careful. So he tells them, this is Exodus 14. He says, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart and he will pursue them. So guess what? God turns around and he tells Moses, see, sometimes you don't realize what God is doing is not about you, but it's to get somebody their breakthrough, the breakthrough that they need. You know, the bondage that they've been in, God is allowing you to warn them that something is about to happen. Don't get scared of the process, but trust the process. Yes, the process is a mess, but sometimes you got to warn them and then be still and let God do it for them. You warn them, but you have to be still and let God do it for them. So it says, and I will, so what God was telling Moses in Exodus 14:4, he says, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart and he will pursue them. So he's telling Moses, he says, listen, I want you to tell them to go this way because I'm going to confuse Pharaoh. He says, but I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart. Pharaoh is going to come after them, right? Because Pharaoh had let them go. But God says, I'm warning you. Thank you, Relye, for joining in. Thank you, Nikki. God told Moses to warn the people that Pharaoh was going to begin to come after them. So what happened was, he says, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart and he will pursue them. But I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and his army. And the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So the Israelites did this. So God is saying, listen, he says, what I'm about to do, I'm going to get the glory out of this. He says, what I'm going to do, he says, Pharaoh and his army will know that I am the Lord. So what he says is, he says, what I want you to do is warn them and then let them know that Pharaoh is going to come after them. So guess what? God says, all I want you to do is warn them that they're about to be freed from what they're in. He says, but the reason why I want you to warn them is because the process is going to get a little messy. He says, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart and Pharaoh is coming after them because you got to realize, let me tell you something. When you in a place stuck for so long and God decides that it's time for you to be free, what God releases you from, God is showing you that the same thing that I released you from may be the same thing that comes to chase you down again. But God is saying what I want you to do is, he says, I want you to know that I am God all by myself. And what he's going to do is he's going to use Pharaoh and his army as an example. Isn't it funny how Moses told them everything, but they, sometimes we done been in a place for so long. This is where I ask the question, do you really want to go back there? I ask myself the question, do you really want to go back there? Because see, sometimes, and this is what I'm going to show y'all where I'm getting to. Sometimes we say this so loosely, like, I wish I could go back there. Whether it's saying, I wish I can go back there to when I was 20, when I was 30, when I was 40, I wish I can go back there. We find ourselves saying sometimes, I wish I would have never left him, or I wish I would have never left her, or I wish I would have stayed at that job, or I wish I would have stayed in that place, or I wish I would have stayed in that neighborhood, or I wish I would have stayed in that home. We find ourselves saying, I wish I could go back there. Y'all catch this. So if God allowed you to go back to where you want to go to, are you willing, which we know this is not going to happen, but have you ever thought, if God allows me to go back to where I came from, do I want to go back to everything that was back there? Do I want the good as well as the bad? See, we don't get to pick and choose when we say, I wish I could go back there. We don't get to pick and choose what parts of back there is. Let's just say we say, I want to go back there. Well, when I go back there, do I want the heartache? Do I want the pain? Do I want the depression? Do I want the sickness? Because back there, I encountered a lot of things. So when I'm back there, do I really want to go through this process of things that I've already went through over and over again? Or do I want God to keep moving me? Will I allow God to let me just go through what I've already been through? So y'all, I'm gonna make it make sense. So he tells Moses, he tells them to just know that I'm about to get the glory through Pharaoh and his army. So he tells the children of Israel this, and he says, so as Pharaoh, guess what? They free now, right? We ain't back there no more. We not back there no more. God has brought them from back there. You know, I'm trying to make a point. Back there was my addiction. Back there, I was in bondage. Back there, I was stuck in one place. Back there, I wasn't thriving. Back there, I was losing everything. So God is saying, I've brought you. You're no longer captured by Pharaoh. But he said, guess what? I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart. And when I harden Pharaoh's heart, Pharaoh is going to come after you. Maurice, thank you so much for joining in. So y'all follow me. So God says, it says God came to give you your life back. Let me tell you something. Back there, a lot of us lost our identity. Back there, a lot of people lost the identity that God had given us. Back there, we lost a lot of things. So guess what God says? God says, I'm going to move you from back there, and I'm going to put you in a position to thrive now. Back there, you had no life. Where I'm moving you to, I come to give you life. So y'all catch this. It says, as Pharaoh approached the Israelites, they looked up, and there the Egyptians marched around them. So guess what? So God brought them from out of bondage to Pharaoh. But God also told Moses to warn them that Pharaoh was going to come after them. Isn't it funny how sometimes God can send a messenger to warn somebody that even though God has brought you from back there, don't be alarmed if your past start chasing you. Because guess what? Pharaoh is back there. So we think Pharaoh is in the past. Everything that was back there, we call it our past. But God is saying, don't be alarmed when the enemy starts to chase you. The same enemy that I may let you go may come back and chase you again. God says, but do not be afraid. Just be still and know that I am God, and I will fight this battle for you. So it says, listen, as Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching around them. So now God has freed these people, just like some of us. God has freed us from a lot of things. And we look up, and here comes somebody from our past, or here comes something from our past marching behind us. And it says they were terrified and cried out to the Lord. So now what they had already been warned of, now they terrified, and they start to cry out to God about something that Moses had warned them about. Yes, Pharaoh has let you go, but Pharaoh is coming back because of the simple fact that God has hardened his heart. Isn't it amazing how you can get away from a big mess in your life, and you turn around and you say, now I know I left that behind, and when you look up, that same mess has reappeared. But God is saying, I'm going to get the glory out of that story. All I want you to do is be still and know that I'm God. So guess what? So they look around, and they are terrified, and they cried out to the Lord. Now, people will say, okay, what you scared of? Well, we know in life, no matter how much we say we trust God, when we going through a process that we don't really like, doubt and fear comes our way. You know why? Because you can't change the process. But what you can do is go through the process and trust God as you go through the process. So they cried out, and they said to Moses, listen here, don't let your past make you feel like I should have stayed where I was. I'm going somewhere. So they cried out to Moses and said, was it was it because there was no grave? So now they asking Moses, listen, we was back there with Pharaoh and he wasn't chasing us. But they didn't realize that they were slaves to Pharaoh and that God had brought them out where they are now is better than they was, because really they was just a slave for Pharaoh. So they started asking questions. They said to Moses, was it because there was no graves in Egypt that you brought us to this desert to die? So now they questioning Moses about, why did you bring us here? Then they said, what have we done? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Now they asking Moses, why did you ever bring us out of the place where we were captured by Pharaoh? See, isn't it funny how sometimes you don't realize that you've been programmed and you've been stuck in a place for so long that you find yourself, even when God has brought you out of that place of bondage, you find yourself wanting to go back, not realizing that God has brought you from Pharaoh, where you were held in bondage, you were a slave to Pharaoh. Isn't it funny how the enemy will make you think that being enslaved is better than you are now? But God is trying to show you back there you didn't have a life. You was being controlled. Back there you was addicted. Back there you was locked up in prison. Back there you were in bondage. Back there you were in a relationship that was tearing you down. Back there you was stressed. You was depressed. But Pharaoh, but your trauma makes you feel like I was better back there than I am now. Why? Because I thought that I had got away from everything that was back there, but now I find myself facing the same thing again. Do not get afraid of the process. What I want you to do is, yes, the process is messy, but I want you to trust God through the process. You can't change the process, but you can trust the process. So they asking Pharaoh, they says, what have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Did we say to you in Egypt? So now, y'all listen. Now they telling Moses, they said, didn't we tell you? Y'all, ain't this just like, and I'm just keep it real. Ain't this just sometimes you talk to your kids and it says, didn't we tell you in Egypt, leave us alone? Let us serve the Egyptians. And they say, leave me alone, I'm grown. And it's like sometimes when you try to warn people that, yes, you are free now, but don't be alarmed if your past starts to follow you. They tell Moses, didn't we say to you, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. Now they saying, it would have been better if I stayed back there than to die here. Moses answered to the people, do not be afraid. Stand firm and you will see the deliverance of the Lord will bring you today. So what you gonna think? So this is the question. They saying, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians, right? So what you think gonna happen if you go back to Pharaoh? Y'all answer that. Let's just think about what was back there. Let's just think how God allowed you to get away from what was back there. What you think will happen if you go back there? See, now Pharaoh done let you go, but Pharaoh's heart is also hardened. You asking to go back to where you came from. What you think Pharaoh gonna do to you if you go back and try to serve him and you had already got away? See, sometimes we got to ask the question, if I could go back there, would it be better for me there, or am I in a better place now? Y'all, hope y'all following me. So it says, then the Lord said to Moses, why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. So God is saying, I took you from back there for a reason. He says, tell them they got to move on. He says, but I want you to know is that the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. God is saying we at a place and a time where, Monique, thank you so much for joining in. We at a place and we at a time where God is saying, I've already brought you out of bondage. God is saying, don't go back. But what I want you to do is I want you to move on. You know, in life, you find yourself, you wanted to go back to a place that had all kind of issues in it. Now, I'm not saying, y'all catch this, because I say all the time, I wish I could go back there. But God really had to ask me a question. If you go back there, are you willing to accept everything that comes with back there? Are you willing to accept the good with the bad? Are you willing to do this process all over again? So let me tell you something. So God says, then the Lord says to Moses, why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. That part really got me when he said, tell the Israelites to move on. I thought about it. If God is telling us to move on, then God is saying you can't go back there. If God is telling us to move on, then God is saying you can't go back there. Now they telling Moses, you should have left us there. Why don't you take us back there? At some point in time in life, for me, as I begin to look at my life, I begin to say to myself, I'm not going back there because I don't want to start the process over. Y'all catch this. The process is already in motion. I'm asking, if I go back there, then that means I got to go back there and I got to repeat some things over and over and over again that didn't feel good. So I'm not going back there because I'm not going to start over at this point. See, you got to tell some people at this point in time in my life, I'm going to keep going until God opens the door that he's going to open in my life. At this point in time in my life, I'm going to keep moving until God fights this battle for me. At this point in time in my life, I can't go back. Yes, the process looks messy, but I have to trust God through the process. You know, I looked and I said to myself, do I really want to go back there? No, I really don't want to go back there because guess what? The things that I dealt with, I've dealt with them and I've came through. It looks better where I'm at now than where I was. I started looking at it. The children of Israelite, they said they wanted to go back. So you got to ask yourself, do I really want to go back to being depressed? Do I really want to go back to being stressed? Do I really want to go back to being having not enough? Or do I want to be in the place where I know God is about to give me my breakthrough. God is about to part this Red Sea for me. See, sometimes the enemy wants to program you that being enslaved to what you was enslaved to was better than moving through the obstacle. Yes, the obstacle gets a little shaky. Yes, the obstacle gets a little weird. But I'd rather trust God with all my heart and lean not to my own understanding. Keep acknowledging God in all my ways and he'll direct my path. Do you want to really go back? You know, I asked the question, do you want to go back? See, sometimes, let me tell you something. You got to be still and know that God is God and that God will fight his battle. Sometimes when God sends you to give people a word, you got to tell them this is what God said. You can't go back, but we going to move forward. Why we going to move forward? Because the process is a mess, but I'm going to trust the process. See, sometimes you don't realize. See, I just began to look and I really begin to evaluate this statement of going back. And I had to really think to myself, do I really want to go back to a place where I was depressed and God brought me through depression? Back there when I was depressed, I really felt like I didn't want life, but God picked me up and pushed me through. He gave me a breakthrough so I didn't have to be a slave to depression. And guess what? When God gave me a breakthrough, I didn't have life with depression, but now I got life and life more abundantly. I trusted the process in depression, but I can't tell you that I'm willing to go back there. Why? Because God parted that Red Sea. He left depression behind me. Why would I try to get back to a place that didn't feel good? See, God is saying what I need you to do is trust the process, but what I need you to do is move on. What I need you to do is trust the process, but I need you to keep going. I need you to trust the process, but I need you to get through what you gotta go through through so that you can see that I'm God and I'm fighting your battle. See, sometimes you think what you go through is to teach you a lesson, but no, it's for the God to get the glory, to let you know that the same God who did it back there is the same God who will do it right here. God says, listen, I'm going to get the glory out of this story. Tell them, yes, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart, but guess what? I'm going to fight their battle. See, you don't realize that if God releases you from something, God will still fight the battle if it comes behind you. You know, I was sitting up and I was thinking, I said, sometimes you got to tell people, listen, if you really want to stay there, you better think about what you stand for. You better think about everything that comes with it. But what you got to do is tell them that God is telling you to move on. And if you trust the process, God is going to show you the reason why he had to move you from that place and bring you to this place. Yes, I understand that right now you still going through, but you're going to look behind you and say, where I am now is better than I was. I didn't have life back there, but God is saying, I come to give you life. Just move on. So, y'all, as I began to just think about how Moses had to, first of all, Moses had to go and he had to talk to Pharaoh. First of all, he had to go and talk to that man several times to tell him, listen, God says, let my people go. And after he talked to Pharaoh several times and told him, God says, let my people go, God told him, okay, time is up. See, you don't realize the reason why you're not back there no more. Because God says, listen, everything that was back there has expired. Y'all catch this. Everything you went through back there, it had an expiration date. Everything that was back there that was holding you back, its time is up. So guess what? God told Moses, he says, tell them, listen, Pharaoh is coming back. But I want you to know, to tell them to be still and know that I'm God. See, sometimes, we don't like the process. I understand the process get messy. But when I look back over my life and God says, do not remember the former things, I started to realize why God says, don't remember the former things. He says, I'm doing a new thing. A new thing is coming to pass for your life. Those former things messed me up. Those former things had me stuck. Those former things kept me bound. Those former things kept me restricted. But when God says time is up for all of that, I can see that God has opened up a door. Y'all got to realize God is opening up doors that no man can close. But God needs you to get to the door. God needs you to know that when you at the door, don't look back and say, I want to go back there. God says, go through some things. See, as I began to look at this message, I said, you know what? I says, sometimes you can talk and you talk. You can talk to your children. You can talk to your brothers, your sisters. You can talk to whoever you want to. At some point, God is saying, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Sometimes you got to be still and watch God release them from what's holding them back. See, sometimes you don't realize in life, you've been with Pharaoh for so long that Pharaoh won't let you go by himself. But if Pharaoh don't let you go, God will make Pharaoh let you go. And when God make Pharaoh let you go, he will make you move forward. See, sometimes we so comfortable with what the enemy showed us back there that he begins to call good evil and evil good. We so comfortable with being stuck with Pharaoh because at least when we was back there, I knew what I was in. But what God does is God will flip the switch on some things, because by your own strength, you just not going to leave. But by God's power, God will make you leave. See, sometimes, y'all, we got to thank God that we can't go back. Because if we went back to where we was, we wouldn't be able to let people see that if God did it for me, he could do it for you. Why? Because I'm stuck back there playing in the same game over and over and over and over again. Y'all know I sit back and I look and I thank God. You know, I pray for my children. I pray for my children all the time. But one thing I do know is this, is if I be still and let God fight my battles, it's not for my glory, it's for God's glory. That God will do things that only God can do. But what I got to do is I got to pray and I got to move on. See, sometimes we stuck in a place. Don't you know sometimes you can talk about the same thing over and over and over, and you'll be stuck in the same place at the same time because you're saying the same thing over and over and over. Nothing is changing. You stand, they stand. Nothing is going in. Nothing is coming out. But when you say what you say, when you use God's word and let God's word start to stir the pot, you tell them God's word, and guess what you do? You move on. So y'all, as I begin to think about this message, I thank God. I thank God that a lot of people are not where they used to be. You know, the enemy will make you feel like because you've been bound in jail for so long that the jail mentality is the only thing that you have going for yourself. But God says, guess what? If you won't let that mentality go, I'll make it let you go. See, y'all got to realize that sometimes we've been so connected to things that have no benefit that we feel like if we stay where it's not benefiting us, it's better than where we going. Stop being scared to go forward. You know, I thank God on tonight as I sit back and look at my life. Do I want to go back? No, I do not want to go back, because guess what? If I go back, I got to start a lot of processes over and over and over again. I got to start a lot of things. I got to go through that thing over again. And guess what? God brought me out of that. I'm not trying to go back to being depressed. Why? Because God brought me out of that. I'm not trying to go back to sickness. Because why? Because God brought me out of that. I'm not trying to go back to, you know, for whatever you was caught up in. Don't, you know, sometimes we keep looking back. And the more we look back, the more we go back. But when we start to say, I wouldn't dare go back to that place, guess where our mindset takes us to? It takes us to this place. And when our mindset takes us to this place, guess what? We start to see doors open. We start to see the power of God work for us. We start to see how things can change in our life. So I just thank each and every one of you all who join in with me on this live. It's truly a blessing. You know, y'all, Sherry Dillard, thank you so much for joining in. I just thank God on tonight. Y'all, I'm not going back. You know why? Because if God wanted me back, he would have left me back there. But because God seen fit to move me forward, that's where I'm going. Yes, I may have to leave a lot of people back there, but if God, you know, God give us all the same opportunity. It's up to us to come. You know, the children of Israel, they started telling Moses, you know what was the funny part about it is, they started telling Moses, didn't we say leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptian? So now you telling Moses to leave me alone. I'm not trying to, sometimes you got to just, you want to be left alone, I'm going to leave you alone. But one thing I do know is this: when I leave you alone, I'm gonna leave you with a word that says, my God says, if you just be still and you just come through the process, my God, the God that I serve, he will bring you through just like he brought me through. You know, I can't make you come, but guess what? If I keep going, I keep going. God will show you that the same God that allowed me to come through is the same God that will allow you to come through. So you all, I just thank you all on tonight for, like I said, joining in with me on this podcast. I just thank God for allowing me to come on this podcast to, you know, bring his word, to give you his word. Y'all, we don't have to be stuck nowhere we don't want to be. This is the whole message that God had given me. You don't have to stay with Pharaoh. Just because you've been in a place for so long, just because you've been at a job for so long and you know that you're not prospering in this job, and God is telling you, if you can be still, I'll fight the battle for you. But what I need you to do is move on. Then God is telling me I ain't got to stay there. You know, if I've been in this relationship for so long, and I understand sometimes relationships are hard to leave, but I have to ask myself, is this benefiting me or is this taken away from me? And if God is telling me to move on, I got to move on. Let me tell you something. You don't like the process. I understand it. Don't nobody like to be processed. But you do need to trust the process as you go through the process. The process may not be pretty, but guess what? If you go through the process, God says you haven't seen what's on the other side of the process. So, y'all, I just thank you. I just thank you so much. Ms. Gwen says it's a blessing to join you on the podcast. Thank you, Ms. Gwen. Thank you so much. Y'all, as I just, like I said, to come up with this message, some things I used to think I want to go back. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back to, what? Y'all, now my husband trying to ask, what you say? How do you stay focused in the midst of confusion? Asking for a friend. Y'all got a question? Y'all, my husband got a question. Y'all got an answer for him? You asking for a friend. How I stay focused in the midst of confusion is I learn to trust God. I trust God when I can't trace God, even in the midst of confusion. You know, if you look at it, the children, the Israelites, they were confused. They were confused because they were used to being Pharaoh. So it says the Israelites are wandering around the land in confusion, hemmed by the desert. So they were running around in confusion. But what God was telling Moses is to tell them, but I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So the Israelites did that. God had begun to say to Moses, I know they confused. He says, but I want them to trust me. You know, the Bible tells us to trust in the Lord with all our heart and lean not to our own understanding, acknowledge God in all his ways, and he'll direct your path. So that means even when you're confused, I still got to trust God. Let me tell you something. Ms. Gwen said it right. Pray. You got to pray. Monique said, I keep the faith out the situation in God's hand. Monique said, keep the faith and keep the situation in God's hand. That's good. You know, let me tell you something. When I found myself going through depression, I was confused. I was very confused because I just couldn't understand what was happening, why it was happening. The biggest question for me was why was this happening to me? I was confused all across the board. But the only thing that kept me grounded was, even in my confusion with being depressed, I had to trust God because, and you know what? God is so good. I didn't feel like another person understood what I was going through at that time but God. And like Ms. Gwen said, I had to do a lot of praying. I had to do a lot of praying when I found myself running. I had to do a lot of praying when I found myself trying to go back to where I came from. And that's so interesting because when people asked me what was wrong with me, I kept saying, I just want to go back to who I used to be. I just want to go back to who I used to be because I thought who I used to be and where I was okay. And they had to keep, it was so funny because one of the therapists that I talked to, they kept asking me what happened. And I just told them, I don't know. I just want to go back to who I was. And she made so much sense. She said, if you go back to who you was, you still have to come back to this process. Y'all, that makes so much sense. If you go back where you was, don't you realize you still got to go through the process to get back to where you trying to get to now? So y'all, as everybody say, you got to pray. You got to keep the situation in God's hand. Sometimes you're going to have to trust God even when you don't see a way out. You're going to have to trust God when it looks like everything is in chaos and everything is in confusion. You're going to have to stand firm on God's word, knowing that God's word will not go out and come back to you void. You're going to have to trust God, knowing that God says he'll be your strength in your time of weakness. You're going to have to trust God even when you on the boat and it feels like the boat finna flip over, knowing that Jesus is right here with me. I just would tell anybody, honestly, you got to trust God. I mean, going through depression, I couldn't trust man. I mean, y'all, I'm not even being funny. I barely could trust that therapist I was talking to. So guess what? I kept talking to God every day. God, help me. God, I don't understand what I'm going through. Really don't know why I got to go through this, but I trust you, God. God, I done seen you do it for people before. See, sometimes, you got to realize that if God did it for them, God gonna do it for me. I had to tell God, I've seen you do it before. I know you to be a way maker, a miracle worker. Would my faith fail? Yes, it would, because going through, a depression is really hard. Trust God. That's all I can tell you. Sometimes you're going to get weak. I'm just not being funny. Sometimes, y'all, I had so much faith in the morning, but by nighttime, I had lost everything. So I went back to God. I pray again. You got to pray. You got to push. You got to pray. You got to push. You got to pray. You got to push. You got to pray. You got to trust. You got to pray. You got to hold on. You got to pray. You got to push. You got to trust. You got to hold on. You got to do so much stuff when you going through. That's why I say the process ain't pretty, but you can get through the process if you hold on to God. So I hope that helped your friend. Thank you. Ms. Gwen said, he said that he will never leave us or forsake us. That's right, Ms. Gwen. And I had to realize that, I had to realize God didn't leave me. He didn't. He really didn't. Even though it felt like some days that I couldn't trace God, I still had to trust God. Even though it felt like some days that I wasn't going to make it through, but I had to realize that God said he would be my strength when I'm weak. Even though I felt like I would never come up out the valley, that I would end in the valley, I had to realize that God says that you can go through knowing that he's a rod, a staff, and a comforter. That's why I say, y'all, I wouldn't go back. I looked at the children of the Israelites, and when they said they wanted to go back, I understand sometimes, because God had to bring it to me when I was going through that depression. I kept telling that therapist, I just want to be back to the way I was. And the lady kept telling me, if you go back to the way you was, you still gonna end up at this point. So we can't focus back there. What we can do is we can talk about back there to see how you got there, but we gotta move to go to so that we can get you here. So it just makes a lot of sense. It just makes a lot of sense. Like Miss Gwen say, you can't go back there. You can't. I look at it all the time. When you have a baby and you done went through all that labor, I ain't heard nobody say yet, I wish I can go back through all that pain again. I don't want to go back there. I don't. I'll go through the process when I have to go through the process, but just saying, take me back there. No, I don't want to go back there. So y'all, I just thank and appreciate each and every one of y'all. I thank my husband for helping me out with this podcast on, as he always set this stuff up for me. I thank God for him. Y'all keep my husband in your prayers. I thank each and every one of you who joins in with me on this podcast. It's truly a blessing. I appreciate each and every one of you all so much. I just wanted to come on here and tell you all, we don't really want to go back there. We don't. Because to go back, you got to take the good with the bad. And if God has brought you out of there, I just don't want to go back there. So I thank y'all. I thank each and every one of y'all. Thank y'all for the love, the taps, the shares, not the taps, the shares, the hearts, the whatever it is. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Tweety is not here tonight. Tweety is somewhere. I don't know. But Tweety, she may come back. Tweety is out of school now, so she doesn't be over here that much because me and my husband have to go to work. Normally, I would pick her up from school. I would drop her off at school, and then my daughter would drop her back off. That's how we would have her. But she does send her love. I'm going to get her. Thank you so much, Zizi. I'm going to get her. Whenever she comes back, Tweety will get on. She'll get on. But I thank each and every one of you all on tonight for just joining in with me. And I appreciate you all so much. Until next Monday, y'all be blessed. Monique, thank you. Sherry, Miss Gwen. I seen Tez on here early. Latanya, Charlene, Nikki, thank you so much. DeWitt, Bull, I seen you on here. Jeffrey, thank you so much for helping me out over there on YouTube. Each and every one of you all, I appreciate you so much. If I missed anybody named, Maurice, thank you so much for joining in. Charge it to my head and not my heart. I think that's Shelly. Shelly, what did Shelly say? Let me just read this comment real quick. She said, it's been a long few weeks, family, but Serenity tuned in. Okay, thank you, Shelly, over my heart. And ears to you right now. Y'all pray for Shelly. Keep her in y'all prayers. Thank you, Shelly. We'll keep you in our prayers. I definitely will be praying for you. But until next Monday, you all be blessed. Thank you.